Well, welcome to the Flakemiri podcast. This is episode 3. Now, this is a show about Gwent, but it's so much more than just Gwent Shinmiri, as we've already kind of set the tone for this in previous episodes as well. But again, I'm Flake, and I'm joined by Shinmiri. It's good to have you here, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Flake. It's great to be here again for episode 3. Yeah, always a pleasure chatting with you. We had a really awesome weekend, right? Casting Open number 4 together, and yeah, I'm happy to get back on the show.
Yeah, it was a great weekend. We'll definitely want to dig into that. This weekend obviously was Gwent Open number 4 for season 3. Plenty to talk about that, but we got to get to our sponsors, Shinmiri, for this episode. And our sponsor this episode is brought to you by nothing, again, in particular, as we don't really have sponsors. But this is also, I know, it's a good opportunity, though, for us to just say, hey, we're good guys. And, there's no shame in saying that we're searching for sponsors. So if you got something, you could toss it our way. This is episode 3. It's kind of like a revenge of the Sith of our episodes. A little dark, a little brooding, but still impactful. So we got some stuff to dig into for sure.
Speaking of Revenge of the Sith, the first time I watched it in movie theaters, I felt like so horrible while watching it. It was just like so dark and so, kind of like evil. And I was like, oh, God, I just had this nasty feeling watching it. But it was still really, really a good movie.
It was a good movie. That scene where Anakin shows up back at the Jedi Temple after, Darth Sidious says, okay, go and take care of the Jedi. And he goes into that room with all the younglings and they're all hiding. And they're like, Master Skywalker. And then he just ignites his lightsaber. It's like, oh, he just murdered children. Plenty of children. Yeah. But yeah. There is the Dagon rumor report, Shinmiri. You can bring that to us, I think. I think it's a recurring theme here.
Yeah, so looking at the official Dagon rumor report, weather report looks like still not happening. Still got nothing.
Yeah, I know. And I know that one of my favorite things that I know that you kind of, I don't know if you like roll your eyes at it or you're just kind of along for the ride at a certain point, but every tournament I like to just plant the seeds because I know that after every tournament, even though more and more people don't particularly buy into my BS, there is that one newbie who is like, did he just say that Dagon is coming? And I'm like, got another one. Every time. There's just always one, Shinmiri, and that's all it takes is just one. But yeah, it's not happening. And
not yet.
Well, don't say yet, because we don't know anything about this, right? So it could very potentially happen, and we'll just never know until, I guess, a little bit before. But as it stands right now, it's trust the Shinmiri weather report. It's not looking too foggy, I promise you. But Gwent did celebrate a 5th birthday recently, so happy birthday to Gwent. And if we're going to go back in the Wayback Machine, this week, 2 years ago, 2019, was Gwent hit iOS. Mobile Gwent was born 2 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big deal. I think, Gwent coming out on mobile phones have really expanded the audience, especially in other countries, such as I think China was really big for the whole mobile market. And yeah, this time of year has been a lot of anniversaries for Gwent. 2 years since mobile came out, 3 years since Homecoming, 5 years since closed beta started. Yeah, big milestone.
Yeah, it seems like this is the season for all those kinds of things. And I was actually looking at patch notes from several years ago just to see if there was anything significant. And I think the patch was like patch 4.1. Like the Professor got nerfed. Quacks, I think, got buffed, if I'm not mistaken. There's a whole bunch of nonsense, a few bug fixes here. Nothing like catastrophic or impactful in that regard. But it's nice to go way back a little bit and kind of think about where we were many, many moons ago. And 5 years of Gwent that's a pretty long time to be alive for a quote unquote dead game that's been dead for 4 years, right?
Yeah, all the time you hear people saying dead game. But I think that's true for everything. Like even Apex Legends, a game that has like 100 million players or whatever, like people still keep calling it dead game. So it's just like wherever you can, there's nowhere you can go, no number you can hit that you can be immune from the dead game syndrome.
Yeah, it's always there. And what's always fascinating to me are these people that are constantly lurking and sort of haunting around the Reddit threads and the Twitch streams that are just waiting to hit that button saying dead game.
It's just a weird phenomenon. Like they don't even play the game. They just like religiously log on to the subreddit every day and just see if there's anything they can pile onto.
Exactly. It's like, is today the day I get to say dead game, and then
okay, I have to admit something, Flake.
Do it.
I experienced something similar when it came to Artifact. I never posted on the subreddit or commented on anything, but I did feel some weird, overwhelming urge to like check the Artifact subreddit just to see what the temperature or gauge the temperature of the Artifact community, see if they were liking the game or if they were thinking that it was like kind of going downhill or what, if it was popular or what. It was just like weird. I played it a little bit. I did play it a little bit though. It was not like I never played the game.
Oh, I played it too, and I will say this. I actually thought Artifact was I thought it was a good game. Was it a appealing game to watch other people play? I don't think it was it was a game that was well constructed as a game, but not necessarily built for an audience, right? Mm-hmm. You have 3 separate boards. How does somebody who just tunes in get a grand scheme of what's going on and get that snapshot? Like, you can log into a Gwent game more or less and say, okay, we're in this round. This is what the points are. This is what's on the board. This is what's in the hand. I have 90% of the information I need to get to get situated in what's going on. Artifact was a good game, but it's not something that you can go in there and be like, okay, well, like I need so much more information. There's so much going on. There's so much, these like subtext that I need to be in the know for to actually have an opinion or to situate myself and orient myself in this particular game. That's not a detriment to the game design itself, but if you're trying to sell a game to be, the whole hilarious, it's esports ready, whatever, but it just seemed to falter. And it's
still waiting on that $1 million tournament, by the way.
Oh, don't even start with that. Can I just say one thing about that game? Mm-hmm. There were people like intimately linked to that game when it came out who got early access to the game. And I will say this, the game had a very unique business model in terms of the monetization, where you could go out there and buy and sell specific cards for actual currency, for money, for USD or Canadian dollars or whatever it was via Steam. And what always made me laugh, and I'm not going to name names, but there were people who in one tweet would roast and shut down any inklings that the game was not free-to-play friendly or not friendly to people who wanted to not necessarily invest tons of money in it, but maybe a couple bucks here and there. And in the subsequent tweet, they would brag about how they bought out every single card of one specific card because they knew it was going to be good, so that they can, in their own words, flip them for a ton of cash. So in one tweet, they're talking about how welcoming and free-to-play friendly it is, and it's perfectly accessible because of the market system for new people to come in and spend, rather than spend $50 on packs, they're spending $50 on pick and choose the best cards. Mm-hmm. And then in the next tweet, they're literally talking about how they cornered the market and how they're so smart and they're ready to just squeeze the community of all their dollars. I am so glad that those people lost that little bit of money that they thought that they were going to get rich off of. I'm not saying they're going to get rich and buy yachts and stuff, but still, it was a scummy thing to do. And it's unfortunate that the game didn't work out, because I hate seeing things like that kind of falter. But the people who really wanted to be scummy about it, well, they ate crow at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right. Getting back to the topic of Gwent, we had Gwent Open number 4 this past weekend. You and I were casters in the official event. What were your thoughts about the event as a whole, and also what were your thoughts on the lineups, the decks that people brought?
I thought the event itself was, it actually kind of came off a little bit unique. I don't know if you got the same vibe as me. I mean, you and I have done So many events. You and I now have done so many events together, even, and it seems like just yesterday we did our first, but we have a lot of them under our belt together now, and even separately. Yourself as an analyst, yourself with McBeard, myself with McBeard. We've done so many of these, but this one felt different, and it felt different for a few different reasons. Because it didn't even feel different now that we're doing it from home, because that seems like the norm. When we go back to Warsaw, that's going to feel different, which is odd.
Yeah, for sure.
This one felt different because the players many of them were very new. Like you have the Shaggy, the Hannah-chan, those people, but there were so many fresh faces and fresh names. But more than that, and you mentioned this multiple times privately and publicly, they were just shooting from the hip, man. We did not get much time to just sit and digest because it was rapid fire, every single card.
It was the fastest Gwent Open tournament we've ever had, like the shortest amount of time for the broadcast. And when someone told me that, I was like, wow, yeah, you're right. This one really felt like it flew by. And it wasn't because like there were tons of 3-0s. There were actually quite a few series that went to 3-2. It was just like everybody, or not everybody, but like most people participating in the tournament, they were just playing really fast. And yeah, I felt myself like struggling a little bit to keep up with a pace with the casting, to like figure out and observe everything was going on, thinking it through, talking back and forth with you. And then it would just be like 4 turns had gone by while waiting for my turn to talk. And it's just like, okay. We're going.
That's part of it, right? Is the fact that like you want to complete your thought and just wrap up your package. Obviously, sometimes like the turns would just ping pong back and forth, and you're still trying to talk about the implications of a sorceress being at 6 strength, right? And you're talking about it. But the good news for us in that regard was that the decks were so similar that you're not. It's not like the viewers were missing a whole lot, because a lot of the play had basically happened before, and it was just redeveloping. So for us, there was a little bit of difficulty in trying to create, a narrative where this particular Scoia'tael versus Inspired Zeal Northern Realms was different than the last one that we saw a dozen times already over the weekend, right? And that was challenging.
It kind of works out. Like it kind of worked out that, because the deck lists were so similar, that might have been, a cause for it as well. The players are playing faster because they only had they had fewer number of matchups that they had to prepare for, because the decks were very meta. They had probably practiced them on ladder already, as well as before they even saw the deck list, they probably practiced against these matchups quite a lot. So they knew they were more familiar with like what lines they wanted to take already, what was the optimal sequencing, and they were just like, okay, I know I've seen this situation like 20 times already, I'm just going to play this, and not actually thinking as much on their feet with matchups. Like potentially if people bring spicy stuff, you haven't played that matchup, you haven't practiced that matchup that many times, you're going to have to take your time to think a little bit more. So I think that there is some relation.
Certainly. I mean, you have all the reps already under your belt. There's no surprises in many of these cases. I think Lord Triss probably had the most unique variation of a familiar lineup, right? With Oak and Sheldon Skaggs in his Nature's Gift list, and everything else was kind of, I guess, some things were a little bit different here. He didn't go as hard in the paint with mages, let's say, but the framework was there for a lot of these. Everyone kind of identified what the best decks in terms of factions, and then beyond that, what leaders were best, and then beyond that, what cards within that framework were just too good to deny. Things like Refard's Vengeance, and even, and then just through going down till Philevandrel and Bountiful Harvest, and etc. Like these are just cards and strategies that you cannot ignore. They're just too good.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit more diverse lineup, because there was no qualifiers for everybody to kind of like net deck and be like, oh, this was the best performing deck in the qualifiers the week before, so I'm probably going to just bring this line. And I think also, like with how short the season was, maybe there wasn't just enough time for people to really explore some of the alternative strategies. I would have expected more people to try out bring Rain SK, as well as Meditating Mages. Like all in Meditating Mages, it's actually proven to be successful for some people on the ladder. I know that the number 1 ranked player on Pro Rank right now, got to 2697 with all in meditating mages, a more uncommon variation with like Renew potentially, and as well as I think he had 2 variations, but one of them had Renew, and then he was saying like was actually pretty consistent for him against certain meta decks like Imprisonment and Reckless Flurry.
And they don't get there. And that's another thing that it's fun to dig into or to dissect a little bit, is the fact that, and I see this kind of pop up now and then on Reddit. And I know that if I start responding to these, I'll just go on this massive, it's not a rant, but I can't very, curtly respond to something like this. But people saying, why aren't these decks at tournaments? I see them on the ladder all the time. And I know I poke fun at this all the time, but I'm like, there's a reason you don't see Mill in a tournament, but you'll see it pop up on ladder now and then. Or Lippy, you've never seen Lippy at a tournament, yet it's there are patches of time where it's a very popular list. It's because they're completely different animals. It's a completely different environment. It's a completely different, sustained ecosystem that you have to thrive in, with all the information given to your opponent. Mill is popular on ladder when Hyperthin is popular on ladder. It punishes that. Lippy can be that way and such, but if your opponent finds out what you're playing, if there's no secrets, if they know exactly what to anticipate, what to suspect, they can go ahead and target it, go after it, or just ban it. It's there are glaring weaknesses in this deck that are shrouded behind the mystery of queuing into a ladder that your opponent is not necessarily teched for, not necessarily knows what coin they're going to be on. They have these fail safes, they have these margins that they can operate in to beat those lists, where or sort of insulate themselves from that targeted strategy. And like you said, like meditating mages and Umu playing it to that level, nearly 2,700, which is incredibly impressive. First of all,
2 weeks. It's in 2 weeks too, so it's a super short amount of time. The season has been really short.
Yeah, it's been short, and like, let's just be fair here. In the grand scheme of things, when you're talking about MMR and particular factions and getting a score to something, getting your score to 2,500 is exceptional. That's pretty much, I would say, nearing elite class. 2,550 to 2,600. If you can get to 2,600, you are elite in Gwent. You are top 0.1%. If you can push beyond 2,600 to threaten and tickle 2,700, that is an unheard of a milestone that is so far beyond my own conception of what I can possibly fathom to achieve. That
most people's conception, yeah, for sure. Like I think my personal best is like 2,640, and so yeah, like 2,700 is insane. It's actually like only a handful of players have ever gotten 2,700 or above.
And doing it with something like you said, meditating mages, where we know meditating mages is a potentially problematic card. We know that it has, ultimately, a lot of the sentiment is that you just don't slap resilience on a 4 provision card. You just don't. Especially if it was a 4 provision bronze card, maybe you can think about. Gold card, maybe you could think about it. But slamming it on a 4 provision bronze card in an environment where you could duplicate and play 2 for 1 in a particular turn, isolate those cards, have them happen, and under a potential leader ability that provides zeal and stuff like there's all kinds of reasons why it could be problematic. But I think it's safe to say that all that kind of stuff has been leaked, and we know now that it has been neutered to a degree. Yeah.
You saw the leak changes. We're recording this on Tuesday, and some of the balance changes for the upcoming 9.5 patch have already been leaked through the Gwent website earlier today. So we saw, a couple changes have been revealed already. We're going to get the full patch notes tomorrow.
Tomorrow being Wednesday, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we know that by now. So this podcast typically is is published on Thursdays. So we're recording currently on Tuesday. So what we'll say here won't necessarily be too much of a secret by then. But you'll also probably have the benefit of reviewing Shinmiri's 19-hour VOD, where he goes through all the patch notes and just all the possibilities in the world of everything changing. Is there anything specific out of these that you're intrigued by, out of curiosity, Shinmiri?
Out of the ones that have been leaked already today?
Yes, I think it's safe. We can go through them. I mean, we don't want to go through them all, but there's a few things that I think we can touch upon. I know that there's one. I'll let you gather your thoughts. The one that I caught initially when these were kind of showed to us a little while ago, I immediately said Osriel does not need to be an 8. There's no reason that Osriel needs to be cheaper. I think that Osriel's just merely right now on the sidelines because the archetypes that were prominent, like Keltulis or before it being relics, he just didn't fit in it. It was not necessary for him to be there because relics on their own were good. You didn't necessarily need to set up big relics in the graveyard in order to eat them. It was just not necessary. You could play a Gancan for 5 provisions and do more or less a very similar thing and save yourself some pocket change to, boost up some other cards. But that one for me was like, hey, like why? It's not necessary. That might have been a little bit over the top.
I agree. I also thought that like the provision buff for Osriel probably could have been, moved to a different card. Maybe a more archetype specific card. I think Osriel at 9 provision was still fine.
Right.
But yeah, for me, like I'm really happy with the nerfs to Ku, to Truffle, and Fukusha. Like I'm happy that these super meta cards are getting nerfed. Fukusha nerf might be a little bit on the lighter side. It might see more nerfs in the future, potentially seeing depending on how this one does, the nerf to 4 power. There are some interesting changes and buffs. I like the Death Wish buffs to monsters.
Yes.
That's pretty interesting. I think, with the Detlef getting 1 power is really significant because you're going to get him back like 3 times total, right? So 1 power boost to Detlef is like a 3 strength boost. And we've got the power boost to Maruna. And then different faction. I like the Soldier Nilfgaard buffs with Crossbowman and Illusionist both getting buffed. They have really good, interesting synergy with each other. I'm definitely going to try out like a Soldier Nilfgaard list.
Was the Toad buff in there as well?
Nope. But nobody's going to see this until Thursday, right, Flake?
That's true. I didn't even notice that it wasn't there. Okay, so that's good news. Again, it's Tuesday. You guys did not see the fact that the Toad is getting one hell of a kick in the ass, which is great. That's one that I think will be very important. I mean, the Toad at 3, there's just so much that dodges it. It's such a I don't want to say it's a bad card right now, but there's no reason ever to play it. It's like a Swears. Like it's
yeah. Worse Swears, exactly.
Nonetheless, I didn't necessarily see what was leaked, but yeah, I'm glad that I didn't necessarily talk about this anywhere publicly or anything because I didn't really keep major tabs on all that. But yeah, that's another one. And like the Death Wish getting some help is fantastic because I think the leader ability being neutered, like about a year or so ago was not correct. I feel like I know that it's a strong leader ability. I know that it was top of the heap for monsters for a long time. But I don't think that it needed to be kind of handcuffed the way it was. And there's some will agree, some will disagree, but that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, we'll see. A lot of people have been asking for Overwhelming Hunger to get the 3rd charge back, but they've since already buffed Ekimara, so if they ever did consider giving a 3rd charge back, they might need to re-nerf or unbuff the Ekimara strength buff. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we will have to wait and see if they ever decide to do that, or if they'll just continue printing stronger Consume and Death Wish cards.
I'll just keep bothering Malegion, who will continue to tell me to shut up. That's basically it. It's like, why did you do it? Is it because of V or Vi? And he's like, no, that's not why. It's like, you liar, you lied to me. I know, he's a good dude. Yeah, I mean, the deck lineups at Gwent Open 4 were a little bit very narrowed down. And
it was the most, I mean, let's be honest here. It was the most homogenous lineup we've ever seen. 5 archetypes, really.
Oh,
4 factions, and
yeah.
only NR had 2 different archetypes, which were kind of similar. They're like, it's either duelers with siege or duelers with mages, and they share a lot of the same cards with like the students and Shawnee and Rafard's Vengeance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah,
like
I personally still really enjoy the meta this season, and I had a lot of fun playing ladder, and I had a lot of fun casting and watching the open games because they're just such high level games with great players, and they're pretty intense to watch when there's money on the line and qualification to World Masters on the line, for example. But I would like to see a little bit more diversity in archetypes within each faction, as well as Syndicate and Monsters getting something a little bit better.
Well, the patch might obviously address that, and things might get shaken up. But it's hard to fault players when they identify what's strongest and what is best suited for a tournament scene. To criticize them for saying, well, everybody's playing the same thing and everybody's doing this. It's boring. It's whatever. Well, 99.999% of you out there watching those tournaments have never had to play Gwent for $1,000 in one matchup. They've never had to play Gwent with that kind of stakes. So with that on the line, and first of all, it's $1,000 USD, and myself in Canada is like, wow, that's a lot of money. These are people playing across the world where $1 is significantly more than to them than it is to an American, so to speak, So $1,000, like, just to sort of walk this back a bit, I think it was Magpie who, when he won that major tournament, the amount of money...
Challenger 5, I think it was.
Right. Season 2 Challenger 5, was it? I think.
Season 1 Challenger 5, he won 50,000 USD for first place in Challenger.
Yeah.
And he's from Moldova, I believe.
And they were saying that is like the equivalent of 3 or 4 years of like worth of salary for the average person there. So it's a lot of money. And, to fault these players and kind of call them out for being boring and this and that, well, you want to go in with what is best. You want to go in with what is obviously strongest, most resilient to what you suspect is going to be coming your way to knock you out of the tournament. And if everybody kind of sits back and says, no, these are the best, then that's what we're going to play. Well, so be it. And obviously it's not good. It doesn't make for good TV, but it ultimately you have to understand that the way I kind of see it, it's like I used to play, if ever I would play like Mortal Kombat against a friend who was not good at it, if their best option to win was to just spam Scorpions get over here and uppercut me, I'm like, if that's your way to win, man, that's how I used to beat Goro with Liu Kang just tossing fireballs nonstop because it was the only way I can do it. So if it looks boring,
you gotta use what the game gives you, right? Like at highest level Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5 tournaments, you've got people throwing fireballs repeatedly over and over and over again just to see how your opponent's going to react, to maybe drag out the time to do chip damage. And if it's like got its advantages, then that's the optimal way to play. Then fine. I don't think you can blame the player. If you want to blame anyone, maybe blame the devs. But I think like even then, I think it's also part of the homogenous lineup this time around is a lot of the players are coming from the same community. We had 3 Chinese players, I think 4 players from the CIS community. They talk to each other, they practice with each other. Necrotal and Chase had the exact same 4-deck lineup, so they obviously practiced with each other and prepared. I think a couple of the Chinese players also had not all 4 lineups being the same, but some of the decks were exactly the same. So I think that's also plays into factor with how these players have seemed to agree on the best 4 decks.
And you can't fault them for it. Like you said, it's a team effort for a lot of these situations where one team, if they're all within a community and they're all playing amongst each other and talking and sharing information in most respects, they're not going to necessarily come to different conclusions and just kind of walk away from one another. They've probably come to the same conclusion and said, this is the way that we want to do it.
Yeah. Right? And that kind of segues into a topic that somebody had asked about previously about how competitive teams in Gwent function. And you and I are part of Team Aretuza. I've been around Team Aretuza since almost its inception, and I've seen like a lot of practice sections and people playing and preparing for Gwent Opens, Challengers, World Masters. So like there is definitely a prep team for most of these tournaments. There's a prep team supporting the 1, 2, maybe 3 players participating in this tournament. And usually what happens is like the 2 or 3 people that are participating from Team Aretuza, they usually come up with a similar idea. Like, for example, Demorcus and Andy won first challenger number 4. They both came up with the same greedy lineup strategy to counter what most people were playing at the time were like point slam, undisruptible decks that didn't really have that much control to keep in check these greedy, what was it, like Siri Nova Olaf deck back in beta days.
That takes me way back. The question this was let's give credit where it's due. This was from Emotion Engine, who actually asked this that we didn't get to in episode 2 because the question was so deep. But essentially, that was it. The question was, can you shed some light on pro Gwent teams like Aretuza or Team Leviathan Gaming, how they operate? Not really well versed in esports scene, but I know that some games with massive followings like League of Legends, Overwatch, etc. And then it went like that. Like, how do they prepare? How does the team operation work? The other question about this is also what was interesting in how it was asked was that they're talking about how a lot of these teams have massive corporate sponsors and a lot of money behind them. And then they asked whether CDPR helps fund these teams. Who covers the cost of day-to-day operations? Do members pay for it, et cetera? And do like members get paid and stuff? Well, I mean, I don't think it's that much of a secret out there that a lot of these teams are very self-sufficient. They function basically off of this shared desire for success. It's not necessarily a financial thing. Now, obviously, look. We said at the beginning of the show, if someone wants to toss a sponsor our way or even toss Aretuza a sponsor and pay, that's amazing. That takes so much pressure off and opens up so many doors. Don't get me wrong. But the reason people are associated with teams is that communal knowledge, that team building, that
community,
that joint push, right? Of saying, what do we all think is best? How do we practice it? How do we come up with new ideas and new solutions to the problems that are being proposed?
Yeah, like when it comes to Gwent and Gwent teams like Aretuza and TLG, it's so far away from like the teams that you think of when you talk about League of Legends or Overwatch, the professional teams like Cloud9 or TSM or NRG or whatever, right? Like the Gwent teams don't really have huge sponsorships. There may be like 1 or 2 small sponsorships here and there, but like the members aren't salaried. Like we're not making huge bucks or anything like that. It's just a group of people that are passionate together that get together to hang out and talk about Gwent and play some games together, maybe create some content like the meta snapshot from time to time. It's more of a hobby passion thing than it is like a financial business at this time.
Yeah,
right, for most Gwent organizations.
Like you mentioned Apex Legends, let's put it this way. You play Apex, I play Apex. I played a lot of Halo back in the day, played Call of Duty, but I played with the same friends. And what's interesting about it is that you kind of have like we're not paid to play together. We play under the same kind of group. We're not necessarily a team, but imagine it as a team. But eventually it's like, okay, somebody needs to drive the Warthog. So who's the best driver of the Warthog? Who's the best with the sniper? Who's the best on the back of the Warthog gunner? And who's going to control the rocket and the cloak and the overshield and things like that? There's a team dynamic where you're all working together for the ultimate success. That's kind of what it is here. No one's paying to have us succeed. It's the success that is the driving force for a lot of these teams.
Exactly.
So hopefully that's a little bit of a more in-depth, look into how these teams operate. I mean, there's no subsidies coming from CDPR. There's a lot of encouragement coming from CDPR. There's a lot of acknowledgement for the efforts. There's a lot of involvement.
The closest thing from support to CDPR would be like, for example, if one of the teams were to hold a community tournament or something, CDPR might provide some powder or maybe like a Gwent art book or something like that as prizes for the tournament, which is awesome. But yeah, there's definitely no like money or salary.
Right. But God damn it, would it be freaking amazing if there was? I will say that. This might be a good segue, Shinmiri. Again, that was a bigger, meatier question that I think deserved a lot of attention from us because it was asked a couple weeks ago, or 11 days specifically, from Emotion Engine on Reddit. So thank you for that submission. Hopefully that gives a little bit more insight. But there is a mailbag segment, Shinmiri, coming around the bend. So again, this is a good opportunity for everyone else. We'll be right back with the mailbag. Again, if you want to reach out to us with questions for episode 4, you can always do so. Reach out to Shinmiri or myself on Twitter, Discord, Reddit, satellites, smoke signals, whatever the hell works for you. We'll be back with the mailbag in just a second. All right, it's the mailbag portion here on Flakemiri. This is where you guys send us all of your life's little problems and queries, and Shinmiri and I will try to sort it out when the dust settles. Hopefully you're satisfied. I think that's how we're going to do this, Shinmiri.
I can't be satisfied until you're satisfied.
Wow. That is going on my Tinder profile 100% right away. All right. That is probably up there with We Can't Lose. Those are 2 Shinmiri-isms that I am going to be just leaning on from now on. I will clip that and I will use it on future streams. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
You want to dig in first, buddy, or you want me to go?
Sure. Well, you can go first, actually.
All right, let's go with this one. What is the thought process when you are making a deck to climb with? What are you considering, and how can you improve your competitive deck building skills? This is from Aditya Mulia. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly on Twitter. Aditya Mulia on Twitter.
So for me, I think the biggest thing when like building a deck and tweaking a deck is thinking about the points per provision relationship, points per provision curve. I think for the standard right now, a card with like X provisions should be on average getting you about X plus 3 points. So like a 4 provision card should get you an average of 7 points. A 10 provision card should get you an average of like 13 points. It's not exactly linear, but I think that's a good baseline to start off with, especially if you've got nothing else to work on. And so you got to consider what the average case is, what the low end of it is, and the high end, and how conditional these things are to evaluate how good a card is within a certain deck. And then you have to consider, like synergies. Is it a brick? Is it going to cost you a mulligan? Things like that. So it's definitely not an easy thing, especially as the card collection grows and there are more and more choices. But I think you can kind of take it slow. You can, as a newer player, you can start with like fully net decking from content creators or pro players that you know the deck is good and it's going to work. And then as you start getting more confident with understanding the game and the cards and the whole deck building process, you can start tweaking things like taking a known list and changing 1 or 2 cards to fit your own preferences, or tech cards to address the common matchups that you're seeing in your MMR range. And then eventually you get more and more comfortable. You can start building decks from scratch.
Another little hint for people is that a lot of people when they're having struggles on the ladder is that they don't necessarily. First of all, stubbornness is incredibly detrimental to success. If you have, there's only so much time that you can fit the square peg in the round hole, or try to hammer it in. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. But tomorrow, it might be a square peg and a square hole, and it might work tomorrow. You need to be able to understand when to come off of an idea that's not working, or a deck that's not necessarily well suited for a particular meta. Understanding a meta, just kind of feeling the climate and getting into there. It's like, put it this way, a deck is like a jacket. If it's raining outside, you're not gonna necessarily go out without a jacket, you're going to wear your raincoat. But if it's snowing, you'll wear a parka. And if it's sunny, you're going to wear something else. Now, you could go out on a hot day in a parka and you'll be miserable and it won't work out. So sometimes, it's very rare that there's an all-season tire kind of deck that really works perfectly. I live in Canada. It's snowy. It's icy. All-season tires are garbage. You want winter tires when it's icy and snowy, and you want summers when it's nice outside. Same thing with decks. Some of them are just not suited for the climate, and you need to make that change. Another little hint is if you do understand the meta, sometimes there's usually about 10 provision. There should be like a 8 to 10 provision slot in your deck that just punishes it, be it a Geralt or something else, something that will punish what is very prominent. And oftentimes in certain brackets of the ladder, be it, 15 to 5 or so in that range, if you're in that level range, that 10 provision swap can punish and win a round when you have no business winning it, and that could be a big swing out there. So hopefully these tips can help you. Again, Shinmiri's advice is important, and the better you get, understanding the meta also very important. Here's one. I think we talked about this a little bit. This is from Marktheus on Twitter, and Marktheus asks, what was your favorite moment from Gwent Open number 4?
Yeah, my favorite moment was probably in the double cross Nilfgaard mirror. I think it was the semifinals. I think it was Porkbelly versus Chase. And Porkbelly was pushing round 2 and just forced his opponent into a really suboptimal position with a double cross leader, either having to commit it early and lose carryover for round 3, or hold on to it and greed and hold on to it and maybe just not get a chance to use it at all in round 2 because Porkbelly was threatening to play all of his cards from his hand and have nothing for that double cross leader to copy. And then on top of that, I love the play with copying Blightmakers at the same time, threatening and pushing the 2-0, and then playing Blightmaker, getting an extra assimilate charge, and blocking that front row, making it impossible for his opponent to put a smaller unit to stop the poisons from completion.
That was probably the most effective use of Blightmaker that is not... It's not the way you use it. Typically, that's not the way you want to use Blightmaker. You want to use it to thin and roll for tempo. Getting that cow carcass isn't usually what you're looking for. And in that case, it was done so brilliantly with no recourse. You couldn't just slam a body in there to block one of the poisons and just kind of walk away from it. It was such a heads up play, I gotta say. That matchup in itself, like those Nilfgaard matchups, are always intriguing to watch.
I just got a random thought. What if at that point, with no answer to that cow carcass, what if Chase had access to Imperial Diplomacy and played an Imperial Diplomacy and got a slave infantry from it and transformed the cow carcass? That would have been the one out to that situation. Oh my god, that would have been pretty sweet to cast that moment too.
That would have been awesome. And I will say this. I respect you immensely, but my respect for you way back when had really skyrocketed when you were on the analyst desk with Green Knight. And there was one of those, there's no way this person can win scenarios. And then we kicked it to you and Green Knight, where you're saying there was one out. It was a long shot, but it was one out. He needed to do this to roll into this to roll into this, and he would have been able. And I was like, how do you see that? This is written in the stars somewhere. Shinmiri just coming out of nowhere. But yeah, that was another one. And it's funny because in retrospect, once we had time to digest, this goes back to the fact that they were playing so damn quickly. But this goes back to the fact that, yeah, man, there were some pretty nifty plays, and there was still so much to the left to be desired. A lot of those matchups were able to just go left or swerve right, and there would have been two different outcomes. A lot of decision making and just the reads of the opponent and those balls of steel moments of either passing or playing in round 2. Thought it was up there. My personal favorite though has to be when I very consciously avoided saying elven herpes, and you decided to just whip it out of your pocket and say, here it is. This is what you forgot, buddy. And I was like, all right, writing's on the wall. So that's my perfect, my favorite moment from number 4.
All right. So thank you, Mark Theus, for that question. And we got another one from Magistine on Reddit. How guilty do you feel adding a card to a deck that is counter-thematic? For example, placing a Geralt into a monster deck. Is there any reluctance, or is a good card just a good?
Just a good card. Well, I mean, I will say this. As somebody who is not well-tuned or gives many Fs about, Witcher lore, I don't care. To me, they're all just cards. Ask me if it was like when I play a Star Wars card game and there's nothing more, entwined in my DNA than Star Wars, and I've played Star Wars card games for ages, and I have absolutely no problem putting like Han Solo next to a bounty hunter and thinking that it's a good idea. Like, I get it. It's not a big deal. I have had Yoda piloting the Millennium Falcon, and it has not felt weird in my mind. So to me, how guilty do I feel? 0, because frankly, a good deck and a functional deck, sometimes those synergies go so far beyond just the name of the card and the artwork on it.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, it's also similar. I don't really have any reluctance to play like counter lore friendly combinations together, but it's really a nice bonus when it does work out that way. Like in current Northern Realms, for example, I love how, the devs and the designers have made synergies in certain cards that are lore friendly, that fit together, like Dandelion and Priscilla. Priscilla has an inspired condition, and Dandelion can buff her while she's in the deck to give her that to satisfy that inspired condition, so that when you play her from your hand, immediately she's already boosted and can already, get a stronger combo. And so, like, when that happens, it's an awesome feeling, but I don't take it into huge consideration, or it doesn't stop me from playing certain combinations. I'm going to play what works best, what's going to get me wins, and what I find fun. And I don't think I don't hold it against anybody who do put more emphasis on keeping their decks lore friendly. I think it's just different personalities have different priorities, and I think that's totally fine.
Yeah,
you play the game however you want.
Exactly, and if it works, it works, and that's awesome because it kind of works and all the colors match, kind of thing, right? So, all right, here's my favorite one so far, because I have been talking about this in clips and phrases for quite some time now. You get to be in charge of planning Gwent Open in Season 4 with no budget restrictions. What would your event be like? This is from Tankoff via Reddit.
Jeez, you want to go first?
I mean, I could. I know exactly what I want to do. All right, so you've heard me make references to this degree. I've said it on.
Hold on. Let me answer this question for you.
Okay.
I'm going to answer this question for you.
Yes.
It's going to be a huge stadium, and it's going to be like the crossover events to end all crossover events. And you're going to have like, obviously Gwent is the main focus, but you're going to have like 4 quadrants in the stadium, and you're going to have like a Star Wars quadrant, a Star Trek quadrant, a Jurassic Park quadrant, a Montreal Canadiens quadrant, and they're just like, somehow you're gonna mix all your favorite things into one huge, awesome Gwent event. That would be my answer for you.
I mean, if ever there's some sort of like Flake appreciation event, then that pretty much nails down most of it. I mean, you could.
I forgot that Larry. You gotta make sure there's huge Larry focus.
Oh yeah, everybody would get like a foam finger Larry, like Arcaspore, like waving thing that they could put around. I would probably swap out the Jurassic Park for Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
But you're spot on. You're really close. I mean, don't get me wrong. That sounds freaking amazing. And I'm honestly flattered that you pay attention to me and all of my loves that I mentioned over the years. It's very simple. I honestly believe that events that have narrative, events that have spectacle are always so much better. And I always wish that, and this is one of the things that, again, you can't fault the players for this. but some players just have more personality than others. Like this time, Lex Smiling had personality. He had swagger. He just had presence. Even Chase, I think it was, when he's talking about how he doesn't like the patch and this and that or whatever. But like people like Tailbot, Demorkis, these are people who have personality and they're on display. And whenever I think about that, I always think about in wrestling terms, there's what's called a baby face and what's called a heel. A baby face is the hero, the one that you cheer for. The heel is like the villain, the bad guy. I want to create an event that is in that WrestleMania ilk. There's entrance music. There's commentators that are really, really hyping things up. There's special stipulation style matches of rather than like a tables, ladders, and chairs match, it's like a no golds match. And it's like, oh my God. And then someone comes out and interferes in the match. Like, I want that kind of thing with,
you want a storyline. You want the tournament to kind of be like a movie almost.
Yeah. And beforehand, you have the guy cutting the promo where he's talking crap about his opponent and saying like, when I get you in that match, I'm not going to bring it to round 3. You'll be lucky if you scrape away in round 2. And it's like, and it's just talking about that kind of thing. That's what I want to see. I want something along those lines. I would go over the moon if I kind of had that little bit of creative direction in one of these things.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna keep my answer as the Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Montreal Canadiens crossover. That sounds like a freaking blast.
Listen, either way I win. So how am I gonna? Am I ever gonna feel bad about this, dude? Like that sounds like a great time for me as well. I think we got one left. If you want to get into that one.
Sure. It's from Fuchsia Briefs on Twitter. It says, love the show, chaps. What's the origin of your game monikers?
Ooh. Well, so I'll kind of back this one up a bit. I have been Flake longer than I have not been Flake. Since I was probably 12 or 13 is when I chose this. And this dates all the way back to when I used to play on my 56K modem. I used to play... Yeah, exactly. That's scratchy kind of sounds like EDM now kind of music. It's like Skrillex before Skrillex got famous. But basically, I used to play X-Wing versus TIE Fighter with the joystick on my computer. And I joined a league because a friend of mine played in a league. The league was called LSF, Last Starfighters. If anybody out there from that league is listening, please contact me, because this was my introduction to online gaming. We played in a league, and when you signed up for the league, you needed to provide like your quote unquote call sign, like and I still am a big Simpsons fan, and there was always a moment in the Simpsons where Homer is at the DMV and his sisters-in-law Patty and Selma are smoking. And they get caught smoking and they're about to get fired. So Homer tries to do something nice for them. So he takes the cigarettes from them and starts smoking them. And the woman says, "Are those yours?" And he says, "Yes." And he's like coughing and hacking. And she's like, "Both of them?" And he's like, "Yes, I am in Flavor Country." So I thought Flavor Country was a really hilarious 2 sets of words to slam together. So I went in as Flavor Country. That was the call sign I chose. However, when translating onto MIRC, which was a chat platform way back in the day,
I remember that.
Flavor Country was too long to put as your name, so I had to shorten it. So I shortened it to FLACO, which was Flaco for Flavor Country, which then people just started calling me Flaco, which then became Flake. And then within like a few months, I just said, I'm just Flake, because that's the nickname they gave me. I just said, like, no, it's Flavor Country. They're like, that's stupid. You're just Flake. I said, I guess I'm just Flake. So that's where Flake came from. That's where it stuck. And it has been that for 22 or 23 years now.
All right, cool. Yeah, and I got my nickname Shinmiri also around that age when I was like 14. It's like the year 2000. I was playing an MMO RPG called Dark Ages. It was made by Nexon. Probably most people have never heard of it, but this was like almost the first MMO that I played. And I'd always been very bad at coming up with original names. Whenever any game or any service asks you to come up with a name, everything always seems to be taken. And then one day I was talking to my friend, my online friend, in this MMO Dark Ages, and we wanted to chat together on like AOL Instant Messenger, like some third-party chat when we're not in the game. And I didn't have an AOL account, so they gave me their alternate account, which was username Shinmiri. And so I started using it, and over time it just kind of like became my account, right? My friend never used it anymore. And then I just decided to keep using it because it was a unique name. It usually got past all the whenever you signed up for a service, it would never be taken. But then somehow, so I kept using it, but somehow like now I signed up for Twitch and Shinmiri was taken, so I became Shinmiri too.
Now I was gonna say that was the next question, was like, where does the 2 come from? But do you know anywhere about the origin of Shinmiri? Like, is it from something?
So it was originally it's supposed to mean something in Japanese. My friend told me it meant like southern wind or something like that, but I've never seen anything when I look it up. When I look it up, the internet says it means solemn or sad in Japanese. But like I don't care. I think Shinmiri sounds really cool. I don't really care what it actually means in the Japanese.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's who you are. And like the thing about it now is that the association of the actual translation is no longer valid or no longer most prominent. The association is now with you, the person, which people already get an image. Like if you say Shinmiri, you're not thinking, first of all, southern wind sounds very it's pretty badass, but like solemn sadness is not quite as gruesome and fear inducing. But I gotta say that's a pretty cool story. And there you have it. I think that does it for the mailbag this week, Shinmiri.
Yeah, it was fun.
So thank you to everybody who reached out to the mailbag and sent in your questions. Again, we will be digging into these in episode 4 next week. So if you do want to get in touch with us, again, Discord, Twitter, Reddit, Twitch streams, there's a myriad of ways. You could probably even comment on this video where it lies. This podcast will always also be on Spotify and Apple Pods, but I don't think you can comment there. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I can't comment to that. But another one in the book, Shinmiri, and I got to say this one's probably our best yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely evolved into something more natural, and we're just chatting about anything and wherever the wind takes us, wherever the southern wind takes us, Flake.
And that is such a key element of comedy, is you got to do the callback, and that is a perfect time to sign off and tell everybody again, please hit the follow button on this YouTube video, subscribe to that channel, follow it on Spotify, follow it on Apple Pods, wherever it is, tell a friend. Again, we do thank you so much for listening and watching. If you do have questions, reach out. And I'll end it like I normally do, which is telling you all that you're not losing if you're learning. So keep playing, shuffle up those cards, you might win. And to tell Shinmiri that I love you, man.
I love you too, Flake. And we love you guys, the listeners, the viewers. I hope you guys all take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your week. And we'll see you guys